there, and welcome to the Transparently Jordan podcast, where I'll be talking with a new guest each week, and we'll be covering topics in health, fitness, lifestyle, and so much more. So stick around and let's get into today's episode.
This is Radiant Voices Media.
Hey everyone, I want to tell you about a brand called Ree, the sunglasses made by runners for runners. Born in Sydney, Ree was built with one goal in mind: to create sunnies that actually keep up with you. Whether you're hitting a sunrise tempo session or grinding through a weekend-long run, Ree delivers crystal clear lens tech, lightweight frames, and durability that doesn't quit, no matter how many times you sweat through them or stuff them in your bag. They offer a range of lens shades and technology to suit all conditions. From bright road races to shaded trails, there's no slipping, no bouncing, just solid performance and style. So if you're tired of sunglasses that can't go the distance, it's time to rethink your eyewear. Check them out at reyourrun.com.au and use code Jordan10 for a little something off your first pair. That's code Jordan10 to save yourself 10% off your first pair.
It could be the most unique experience. So I initially got told I didn't make it. So I finished, because I missed the qualifier, I missed it by 0.13. It was based on rankings. And initially I was out of the rankings by one spot. Yeah, and so I got an email saying, like, you have not been selected for the Olympics. And I was just like, well, and I knew that was coming because you can see it publicly listed. And then I woke up the next morning and my coach said, there might be a chance. We've heard the British athletes not getting selected.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to another episode. I don't really have any life updates right now, just like the last episode. It has been pretty, I shouldn't say nothing. I actually just moved. I got a new house, which I am super proud of and super excited about. Me and Harley moved in over the weekend, and I am now officially moved in. I only have about 2 boxes left to unpack. So that's, I guess, a big life update. I just am super grateful to have a bigger space and to be able to have been able to move. So yeah, that was a kind of a big life update, but also episode 50. This is a big one. I want to thank all of you so much. All of you that have listened through the past since 2020 when I started this podcast, or if you're a new listener, welcome and thank you for tuning in. I started this podcast in 2020 with just the goal of learning new skills, but learning about different topics that I think guests could really help educate me about. And, it's kind of evolved over the past few years. I guess it's been 5 years now. And with the Vulnerability Corner, with my book coming out, with just some massive changes each year, I, of course, could not have done it without any of you listeners. So thank you all for tuning in. I think the goal of this podcast has always been to offer some tangible tips to all you listeners so that, you can kind of go away and either be inspired or, learn something that you didn't know before, or just get some insight on some professionals and kind of what they're working around. I think every episode, whatever topic it might be about, there's something for anybody, whether you are male, female, or whatever profession you are in. That's kind of the goal of this episode. You know, if the episode is titled something and it sounds more feminine or it sounds more masculine, I think, again, all you guys and girls listening can tune into every episode and get something from each week. And that's kind of the goal, is to be able to chat through kind of experiences of the guests that I have on and just learn about them and again, offer some tips to everybody, basically. So thank you all for listening. I am super happy that we have got to episode 50. There are plenty of more episodes to come. And yeah, it's exciting looking into the future. All right, now today's episode, I am chatting with Matthew Clarke. Matthew is an Australian runner. He lives and resides here in Adelaide, and he is a two-time Olympian. He competed in the 3,000 meter steeplechase in both the Paris and Tokyo Olympics. Matthew chats with me about his journey to the Olympics, about his experience with the Olympics, experience with running, etc., his motivation. We get into a lot this episode. It was super awesome talking with Matthew. And I think, again, you can get something from today's episode, whoever you are listening. So thank you all for tuning in, and let's get into it. But yeah, thanks again for coming on, taking the time. Morning was well, it sounds like.
Yeah.
It's nicer that the weather is cooled down, I reckon, like especially for long runs.
Yeah, I don't mind the heat.
Oh, dude,
I
okay.
like the heat. Yeah, I think there's something about, I love going for a run.
Yeah.
And then when you're working out and like just after you finish, having like that sweat drip off your nose.
Right,
Kind of
yeah,
thing. I
yeah.
feel like it just makes you feel like you've been like working hard.
Yeah,
Kind of thing.
makes
like
it worth it a little bit more.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I'm definitely
yeah.
more of like a heat guy than a cold guy.
Okay, yeah.
I hate the cold. Running the cold and like your fingers ache.
Right.
There is that's like the bane to my
Yeah,
existence
yeah.
sometimes. Yeah. I hate
So
that.
do you do mornings, or do you try and get into the heat like later on in the days?
Oh, I never chase the heat.
Okay,
too
all
much.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think I just run mornings because I'm just so dialed into that routine now,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
Well, I guess when it becomes habit, it's a bit easier, because
Yeah.
some people hate waking up early in the mornings and doing it, which is fair, and they can do it after work or whatever, but I'm not one of those people. It needs to be done, or else I get home from work and nothing's happening really.
Yeah. I reckon it's funny actually. I went to work yesterday, and I ride on Saturdays, and so I rode in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And I got to work just before 9, which is like a pretty standard start of a work day.
Yeah.
And I didn't run before work.
Right.
And it just felt so wrong. I was like watching my like clock and like
Yeah.
around my house, being like, I don't know what to do with myself in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm so like dialed into waking up,
Yeah.
exercising, that I just like felt I had too much free time.
Yeah.
Like starting at 9.
Yeah. Even later on in the day, like I feel a bit off if I miss it in the morning and have to go after work, or it's kind of like on the back of my mind, oh, I have to do this after work and I'm so tired. I don't want to
Yeah.
go, but I guess you kind of have to sometimes.
Yeah.
But thanks again for taking the time
No, my
to come
pleasure.
on. But maybe Matthew, get started by just telling us a little bit about yourself, if that's all right.
Yeah, so I am a 2-time Olympian in the steeplechase. So, and I am a sports podiatrist at the Sports and Arthritis Clinic as well.
Yeah.
When I'm not doing that, which takes up a lot of my time, I'm also coaching. I help run the junior running squad of my team at Team Tempo as well.
Right.
So, and then between those 3 things, that keeps me
Yeah.
pretty busy.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. How do you like coaching, like from athlete to coach? Is that newer for you, or?
No, I've been doing it since I was 18.
Oh,
so
cool.
I'm 30 this year.
Yeah.
So I've been doing, I guess, 12 years.
For a
kind of
while.
thing then, yeah. So for a while.
Yeah.
Started off in like more schools.
Yeah.
Like kind of coaching groups, just seasonal based through there. And then it wasn't until like I moved over to Adelaide and started training like with the team I'm in now.
Right.
That there was like an opportunity to coach the juniors there.
Yeah.
And that's been like really good. I think there's like a lot of crossover between like being myself as an athlete.
Yeah.
And then also through my clinical work too. And it's
Right.
almost like the way I almost like view it as like a Venn diagram of like,
Yeah.
I guess like athlete, clinician, and then coach is kind of like in the middle
Yeah.
sort of thing, combines it all, which
Yeah.
I really like doing. And I think it really helps develop those kind of like psychological skills too that help
Right.
flow over. Obviously my clinical work, but then like even like me as an athlete, like some of the kids I coach, like they're just so dialed into,
Yeah.
even like unconsciously getting the most out of themselves. But
Right.
then like I guess when I'm looking at it from the other side of the fence and kind of
Yeah.
like seeing how they go about it, I think even I like pick up a few skills from them
Yeah.
occasionally here or there, which is like really rewarding. You know, like teaching them things, they're teaching me things. It's a really enjoyable
Yeah.
sort of situation that I think is like great for all of us.
Yeah, that's quite cool. And like you were saying, like I guess you being an athlete as well, and you know, doing it for so long, you probably have some tips for the athletes that you're coaching, which they probably appreciate. But also, like I guess as a clinician, it's quite handy because I think one of your athletes was on the podcast last week, Alex Gillett.
Oh yes, yeah.
And he was saying like it's just handy to have somebody who knows clinically like, oh, if I have a little niggle here, you know, instead of stopping altogether, this is what I can do. So I guess like having that clinician thing is quite handy as
Yeah,
well.
it definitely helps a lot with that injury management side.
Yeah.
Yeah, like with Alex, yeah, like I do like coach a small group of people
Yeah.
like externally as well, and that's where
Yeah.
Alex falls in. And like that's probably more like my client load for that, for like that ongoing care. And like sometimes I do have those patients, like they come through the clinic, and they're kind of looking more like they, I guess I fix up their injury, and then they're kind of like, okay, so where do I go from running from here? I feel like as soon as I'm ever left to my own devices, I don't know when to push through, when to hold back, and even though I've kind of got the advice, I'm still kind of like learning this journey a lot.
Right.
And I think like that's where I come into my element a little bit too, kind of like just helping guide them through it more than anything. I mean, like as a clinician, as a coach, you can only really give advice. You can't force anyone to do the exercise. You can't force anyone to stop. So you can kind of like give people, I guess, a few pattern identifications more than anything and help them understand that whole subjective. And I think that goes really far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like I think the athletes can definitely like as an athlete myself, you know, my coach also is an athlete and is out there competing, and I think I appreciate that because again, if I have any questions, you can go and you know, the fact that they're out there experiencing it as well is quite handy, I think. So I think the athlete side of things, like we appreciate things like that, which is quite awesome. But Matt, maybe let's rewind back to kind of your start with running and everything. So at a young age, was running kind of your thing, or what kind of sport, or how did that all develop?
Yeah, so when I was like really young, like through school, particularly primary school, um, it wasn't necessarily running per se as like this is my thing.
Yeah.
But I was always sporty.
Okay.
Like I always loved playing lots of sport. Like whether it was like primary school, just PE classes, whether it was, you know, playing soccer, whether it was playing like AFL. I really loved cricket growing up.
Okay.
Played a bit of basketball. That was probably the one sport I wasn't so good at.
Okay.
But still played a lot of it. I think it was good for my development.
Yeah.
But yeah, I played like just lots of sports growing up, and I feel like I was always, I guess, identified as like a really fit, active kid.
Yeah.
When I was at school, I probably then like more middle school, so around 7, 8, I probably started realizing I was a bit better like that endurance-based, fitness-based sporting type. So like when I was playing AFL, like I'd smash all the fitness tests, but then struggle a bit more on game day around like the actual like physical attributes, like tackling, getting knocked, all that. And then like as well, like I saw my running like really increase around that time as well. But I didn't really understand that whole lifestyle element that endurance sport comes with. Like I was really dialed into that thinking of like it's a seasonal sport like footy, like cricket, and so you do it and then you stop when there's not formal kind of training, and then you just come back to it. And I guess you can get away with that like in junior like seasonal sports like footy and cricket because they're more skill based more than anything. But I quickly found in running that if you don't run at all on your like school holidays, you come back, you're really unfit, and then you're playing catch up, and then you get, for me, it was shin splints all the time through school.
Yeah.
And I guess didn't really get great advice at the time on it. And so my solution was just stop running until like later in school, and I just played cricket, and I was fine with that. Like it wasn't like a traumatic thing. Like, oh, I wish I could run. I was just like, okay, this just isn't for me. I'll go play cricket instead. But where I guess like the really turning point came for me was when I started uni. I just had so much time on my hands. Like school, obviously, it's like a big time commitment that you have to go to.
Mm.
Whereas like university, when I started, I had 7 contact hours a week in my first year of podiatry, and that was
Right.
full time.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't take on more work.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, what am I gonna do? I want to stay fit and well,
Yeah.
and there's no like formal organized sport at uni anymore.
Yeah.
And so I just took up running.
Right.
And I had a few mates like from running back in the day, and that they were doing more formal training, and so I used to go down and train with them a little bit, and then basically from there, all the goals just kept getting slightly bigger and bigger and bigger. Kept ticking them off all a lot earlier than I was expecting. So my first goal, for example, was to break 4 minutes in the 1500.
Right.
And my thinking behind that was like, well, all the best guys at school
Yeah.
did that at APS
Yeah.
Champs. So if I can break 4 minutes, like
Yeah.
to me, that'd be great to kind of end my career with that.
Mm.
And I did that in my first season. I was kind of like, oh, I'm not quite ready to stop running
Yeah,
yet. I am
yeah.
enjoying this kind of thing. And so then, as I said, the goals just kept getting bigger and bigger. Eventually, I ran like a 29 low 10K on the road. Then that kind of surprised me a little bit. I was like, well, that's pretty good. I beat a few good guys in that race. Like I ended up beating Liam Adams and Collis Birmingham in that race. And like, to be fair, Collis was in the back end of his career
Right.
in that race. So he wasn't prime Collis Birmingham.
Yeah.
But at that point, I remember chatting to my coach at the time saying like, oh, like, do you think there's a chance that if I really knuckled down, like, I could make Australian teams?
Mm.
Like, is my trajectory
Yeah.
potentially looking like that if things go well? And he
Yeah.
goes, yeah, but probably not in the 1500, which
Right.
you're chasing right now.
Okay.
And he goes, give me a set to kind of like look at the Australian teams, see what the kind of gaps are.
Yeah.
And he said, looks like 10K or steeplechase. And I
Okay.
was like, well, I've always been sporty growing up,
Yeah.
so let's try the steeplechase.
Uh-huh.
And then basically from there, that was the start of me starting to make Australian teams. So it was like World Uni Games, Olympic Games, World Champs, second Olympics.
Right. Okay. So were you always competitive? Because I think to be goal driven and to be wanting to achieve a goal and then the next goal, you have to have a competition drive. So throughout that journey, were you always kind of competitive, or was it not
So
until?
competitive.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember like growing up as a kid, it was funny. Like my parents were kind of always like, oh, don't be too competitive. Don't be too competitive. But like, I think I look back on it though, and even though like they were saying that, I
Yeah.
could tell too that like, they just had that competitive drive in them as well,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like I've got 2 younger sisters, and we were just so competitive
Right.
growing up.
Yeah.
They were pretty high achievers as well. Like my oldest younger one, she was making national finals in the 4 hurdles.
Okay.
My youngest one qualified for the world under 20 rowing team when she was
Wow.
in school. So we were just always competing against each
Yeah,
other. And
yeah.
like even though my parents were like, oh, I think when stuff was really getting heated, they'd be like, oh, don't be so competitive, don't be so
Yeah.
competitive. But I think at the same time too, like they were super driven. Like my mum especially is just so driven. Like
Yeah.
she works so hard and is always like looking to do more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
And I think she's starting to realize now, I think I need to dial back. I'm over 60
Right.
now.
Yeah.
But I mean, growing up as a kid, we were always just like pushed to like, oh, you can run a bit further, you can run a
Yeah.
bit faster,
Yeah.
you can do a bit more schoolwork, you can study a bit harder. Like
Yeah.
it was just driven into us
Yeah.
at a young age. Like when I look back and reflect on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've carried that all the way through, and it's been a bit of a curse at times because you can get a bit carried away with it,
Yeah.
but at the same time too, it's definitely the fuel that lit the fire at the start. I think.
I think that's quite interesting and quite cool, like to have that push, from siblings and from family, because I assume they're quite a good support system for you. But I think also to be, competing against family is a lot more healthy than competing against yourself sometimes or competing against others at a young age. So it's quite good that you had that experience from family. Was there a moment, so let's maybe like when you were younger, what was your motivation back then? So, did you know that, I know you were saying that running kind of naturally progressed, but did you know that you always wanted to reach like professional level and something?
I think I always dreamed about it.
Okay.
Like I was always like as I said, like being a sporty kid. It's every sporty kid's dream to be like, God, I want to go to the Olympics. Like that would be so cool.
Yeah.
And I remember like Mum's got all these like kids artwork
Right.
in her office.
Yeah.
And like there's heaps of my artwork that has Olympic rings all over it. And so I think fantasized about it a little bit. And like maybe if I like look internally a little bit, there's a bit that said, yeah, nah, like this was my thing. I'm going to go to the Olympics one day. And like when it happened, I guess you could make that story of going back like, oh yeah, no, I think that's always been ingrained in me. But honestly, I think when I look at my results as a junior athlete, though, there was nothing really indicating that I was going to do it. And so, like, a bunch of these kids I coach, more than probably about half of them have all run faster than I have at that age. And like as good as they are, like statistically, most of them probably won't make the Olympics though. I'd love for a few of them to. I'd love if one of them do, kind of thing. But like I wasn't showing anything at a young age that was kind of, I guess, dialing me in and preparing myself for a professional sporting career. I think I always wanted to play cricket for Australia more than anything.
Okay.
But that was, I think I realized pretty early on that I was never gonna do that. I just couldn't quite bowl fast enough.
Yeah.
And I definitely couldn't bat well enough.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, I think where I gravitated in running performance though is obviously had some natural talent. But I think it rewarded that hard work personality and that competitive mindset.
So when you you went to your coach and you asked, okay, I guess it's steeplechase for me. What was that conversation like, and kind of where did things go from there?
Like when I said to him, like can I make Australian teams? I guess the conversation was like, do you think that you can like shift your physiology towards 10K? Because I was running 1500 at the time. And so he's like, do you think you could, I guess it was a question of, could you shift your physiology and training load towards 10K? Or do you think you're coordinated enough to very quickly learn a skill that you've never done before? And I think, again, because I had that sporty background, and one thing probably else that I'm pretty good at is I'm pretty good at working out and finding like teams around me that can support, I guess, a goal that I'm aiming for. So that was, for me, it's learning to hurdle, learning to push over a barrier. And so I worked in with a 400-meter hurdles coach. And I was there weekly, like from April that finished that year all the way to my first one in December. So it's like 8 months of like weekly steeple work, then like mixing it in with my training before I even did my first one. And so, I guess like, the conversation went that way, and it was never a thing of like, do you want to do the steeplechase? It was just like this, if you want to make an Australian team, this is your only option. So you make this work if you want to make an Australian team. And so that was kind of the conversation. It wasn't so much do you want to go do this new event? It was if you want to go and perform at the highest level, you have to make this event work.
Okay. So then how did your day change, I guess? Because I think, to be running and competing, but to be training or going for an Olympic spot is totally different. So how did your day and your structure kind of change when you decided, okay, I'm going for the steeplechase, this is the goal now? Where did things evolve, or how did they evolve?
I think the biggest thing for me is probably just developing a bit more just general maturity more than anything. So I think when I say there's heaps in like young athletes, and I was definitely one of them, is you're very like emotional driven, I think, and you're like ego driven, especially like I was before it. I'm like an early 20-year-old male, so like I'm just rocking up to training. I'm blitzing it. I'm doing my best to like fuel the ego kind of thing, show off where I can, just show off to myself sometimes kind of thing that look, I can do this kind of thing. Where I think the shift came, and then working with my current coach towards it, like we just had to take a much more professional approach with it. So it's not going out to training and just belting yourself and then rocking up to race day tired, or rocking up to race day and not having any extra gears. It's all about, we have to tailor the training to train. And he was really good at showing me that. So my current coach is really good at being like, okay, so we need to develop this particular attribute, I guess, in this training block. And that's where the shift came more than anything. It's not just being like, cool, I need to run these splits to be able to, I guess in training, to run these splits on race days. No, you need to develop this physiological response to then work that all together, which then produces you the ability to run it on race day. And you've just got to trust the process a little bit more. And that's where that maturity comes in.
For sure.
Trusting the process a lot more.
And were you still going through uni at that time, or did you stop?
I just finished.
Okay.
Yeah, so
All right.
I finished uni in 2019.
Okay.
And I'd actually committed to the move to Adelaide before my final exams.
Okay.
So I was really hoping I'd pass those final
Yeah,
exams.
yeah,
I was pretty
yeah,
confident on it though. I
yeah,
worked pretty hard at uni to make sure my grades were good enough.
yeah, yeah.
And so I was pretty confident I was
Okay.
going to pass.
So then that was one less pressure, of course, you know,
Yeah.
not having uni, but what did your day look like then? Like, did you have to have multiple sessions a day, I assume, and like how was that structured?
Yeah, and like that was hard.
Okay.
Like I think performing as an athlete whilst I was doing full-time uni. And that was just like there's no choice in it. So I was doing full-time uni because like I had placements in podiatry. So going part-time, you can't do part-time placement. And so I think that was hard because you're juggling. I look at it as like you're juggling three pillars. You're juggling uni, you're juggling running, and you're juggling like a part-time job to kind of fuel it, to fund it as well. Whereas as soon as you finish uni, you've only got two pillars all of a sudden. You've got running, and you've got, if you need to like fund it a little bit, you got a part-time job as well. So I again, like I found that I had heaps more time to chase that dream. And I think timing as well, like coming out of COVID, it was hard to find a job initially. But then when I finally got the job at Spark, my employer, who is still my current employer in Michael Nishki, like he was really supportive of like me chasing that dream. And like to be fair as well, like I think achieving those goals then brings back that experience into the clinic as well, kind of thing. Like it helps with patient buy-in. It adds to my experience kind of thing too, so that I can relate better to patients. So I almost like look at it as like a bit of investment into my career a little bit too, sort of thing. It's another skill that I can bring into my interpersonal development.
Yeah, okay. So other than time, what were kind of struggles that came up in the early period when you were just getting it all started?
I guess like the biggest thing is like so when I first moved to Adelaide, like that was a big life shift. Like I'd always lived in Melbourne. And I think getting that right was tricky again. And like I was still in my early 20s. So I probably rocked up, threw my ego around a little bit, probably trained a bit too hard in the first year. And I actually had a bit of a flop that first year, like in my running. And I was really lucky because I got thrown a lifeline because the whole Olympics got delayed by a year. And I think in between those years, we had a pause. They cancelled all the majors. They cancelled the Olympics, or they delayed. But we had time just to stop, kind of thing, and reflect. And I think we worked out all those different, I guess, training approaches to how I did. What works for me, what doesn't work for me. We tweaked a few training things. But I'd still say that the biggest thing was just the relationship building. So like my main training partner was Max Stevens at the time, and he was also going for the Olympics in Tokyo. And I think sometimes it was a bit of just an ego contest out there between us. Whereas I think in the second year when we went for it, it was definitely more of like a team support culture between us. And like that was one of the driving factors that got me there as well was like he got really unlucky just before national champs. He tore his calf. So that ruled him out of the national champs. Got himself back running, and he probably came to the realization that his dream was probably over at that point in terms of making Tokyo. But he said he kind of looked at everything, and being the selfless guy he was, he said to me, he goes, look, I'm not going to make this one, but you're still in with a shot. I can't get myself into 8:22 shape. You're looking like you might. I'm going to go up. I'm going to pace you for it. And that was a massive, I think, defining moment in that Tokyo campaign was him sacrificing his shot at the Olympics to go up to Queensland with me, pace me 3 races in 10 days, literally run himself into the ground from the front as far as he could go, like a domestique would in a cycling event kind of thing. They're just like wrecking themselves on a hill for their teammate. He did that for me 3 times in 10 days. Missed the qualifier by the narrowest of margins, but it was enough to just scrape me into the quota by 1 point in the end.
Wow.
Which was the equivalent of 0.3 of a second across 3 races.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So without it, probably wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't make it.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, because that was my next question is, you know, I think running can be quite an individual sport, and it is an individual sport. What were your other support systems, and how did that all work, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I think running's an individual sport in a sense. You're out there on the track all by yourself, but the way that the sport's moving now, it's so team orientated for every athlete out there. Like to my knowledge, there wouldn't be many athletes out there now at like the level I run that just do it all themselves. So they coach themselves, they gym program themselves, they do diet, nutrition themselves. They do everything themselves. It's very rare. At the very least, you still need an athlete manager to get you into races. And so the role of my team is huge. So like even I guess I do a bit of coaching, and I guess objectively I could potentially write a program that's pretty similar based on what I've learned, what my coach does. But like there's a massive part in having a coach externally watch your training too and critique and make sure that you undertake the goals of the session rather than just what's on paper. And I think that's where he comes in really valuably, is that if I were to write you can do 6 by K, for example, and you can undertake it in like effectively infinite different ways, kind of thing. Like you can go too hard and put yourself into the ground, which is probably the most common thing that I think most top end athletes do. You can not train hard enough, or you can get it just right. And getting it just right's a bit of a sweet spot, and that's where sometimes you need a bit of feedback throughout the session from someone watching you. And like, you'd know, just like any athlete of any level, sometimes when you're on that red line, you can get a bit emotional. You can see a bit of white line fever. You can get a bit snappy. And I think that's where the role of the coach, and my coach does it really well, comes in really well, either settling you down most of the time, or if you're being a bit slack and you're a bit off and you're a bit flat, kind of like amping you up a bit more. And I guess dialing your subjective in to achieve the objective goal of the session that he's kind of got written for you. And so that's the big one from the team. But then like recently, like I'm getting a bit older now as an athlete, so I'm getting a lot of like soft tissue injuries more than. So I tore both my hamstrings last year. That role, like my physio, working in with my coach and myself kind of thing to, I guess, so I did both my hamstrings like peak season. Like I did it 2 weeks before the week before National 3K last year, and then did it, and that was only 3 weeks before the national champs and the steeplechase. So I guess the role of him working in with my coach and then myself to make sure I was right is of course crucially important to my success. And it worked really well. Like I ended up winning nationals last year for it. I guess the list just goes on. You got training partners, nutritionists. Like it's a massive team sport. I think the way I describe it is my body's is a Formula One analogy. My body's effectively the car. My mind's the driver. And then you have everyone else who has to work on the car.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's important. Like it's important to discuss that because again, like you were saying, it is you're by yourself on the track, or you're by yourself running a 5K or whatever to people out there running, but it takes like more than that, I think, sometimes, if people are aspiring to do more, and just finding your team, but also finding like people to train with and whatnot can be quite handy and quite helpful, I think, as well. Now, when you were leading up to the Olympics and your first Olympics, what was running through your mind? Like, when you got that call or the whatever it was to say that you're going to the Olympics, what was running through your mind then versus, when you were actually in Tokyo?
Yeah. So I reckon, I don't know anyone else who's ever gone through it. It could be the most unique experience.
Okay.
So I initially got told I didn't make it.
So
I finished, because I missed the qualifier, I missed it by 0.13.
Yeah.
It was based on rankings.
Right. Okay.
And initially I was out of the rankings by 1 spot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I got an email saying like, you have not been selected for the Olympics. And I was just like, well, and I knew that was coming because you can see it publicly listed.
Yeah.
And then I woke up the next morning and my coach said, there might be a chance, we've heard the British athlete's not getting selected. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, I guess we better tell like Athletics Australia, Australian Athletics now. And so we told them, and then they gave me a call. They're like, look, that's correct from what we've heard, but like there's a bit of an admin kind of period, and they have to get taken out a certain amount of time, and that athlete's put in an appeal because he feels like, obviously, you don't want your dream to be taken away, kind of thing. So of course he's appealing with everything he can. And so he did that, and then they said this is kind of like the deadline for when it has to be done by, and we'll give you a call regardless at the end, or how it goes. that time came around and I hadn't heard anything yet.
Yeah.
And so when I got the call, I was expecting it to be like, hey, obviously the deadline's up.
Yeah.
Like, this sucks for you,
Yeah.
but this is just the end.
Yeah.
All the best for the future.
Yeah.
And I got a call from Andrew Fake, who's the head of high performance at Athletics Australia, and he says, hey, Matt, how you feeling? And I was like, oh, I'm a bit flat. It's been a pretty long week.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, well, you better spark yourself up, mate, because you've got an Olympics to prepare for.
Oh, wow.
And I just couldn't believe it. I was like,
Yeah.
I was not expecting it at all.
Yeah.
And I just remember just being speechless. I was like, thanks.
Yeah.
And I just hung up the phone. I couldn't say anything else, kind of thing. And I was with my now wife at the time.
Yeah.
Walked in, told her. She just started crying. Like, it was just like this weird like dream situation.
Yeah.
And we kind of, I guess, gave ourselves like that night to celebrate and enjoy it. Then after that, it was just about switching on, getting ready again.
Yeah.
You know, for the biggest event of my life at that point.
Yeah.
And then I guess that was actually pretty tough on reflection. Not I guess tough from a traumatic point of view by any means. Like, it was still awesome. I was having a great time.
Yeah.
But it was tough to stay, I think, switched on and focused because I'd put so much energy into qualifying. And then I think I nearly started processing that was the end.
Yeah.
And so then I had to really work hard to like shift my focus into being like, okay, this isn't the end. You've actually got another step to go. And I just remember like the actual Olympics itself probably being a bit, I guess, overwhelming per se. I had a great time.
Yeah.
But I think I just took it a bit too much.
Yeah.
Like, I was just a bit like, oh, cool. There's so many like fantastic athletes here. There's so many good athletes in my race. There's so many athletes in my race. That's not what I'm actually used to because everything I'd done was time trialing leading into that.
Yeah.
And I think I just made a lot of just poor decisions in the race tactically.
Yeah.
And then probably didn't have the race that I really wanted, kind of thing. But nonetheless, like, I think like I still got there, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was something that I looked back on and thought like, you know, box ticked at the end of the day.
Right.
Sort of thing.
So then where did things go for your second Olympics? Like, where did you have time off and then, you know, set a plan or new plan, or what was the goal coming out of Tokyo?
Much more straightforward. So we learned from that to, you know, like, okay, we need to prep for it, not prep for qualifying for it. And there was still the process of qualifying. I started off the season pretty average actually last year, but then turned it around. I think we got fit at the right time, won nationals. And then from there, just every race was like a slightly bigger progression. And that's what we're aiming for. We're like, okay, we can't peak before the Olympics because that's what we did last time. And then we went in, like, fizzled basically. And that's what I did World Champs the year before as well. Like, I'd peaked way too early and then I was hanging on by a thread and I was just in cactus form by the time World Champs rolled around. Whereas for the Olympics, I think we were so dialed in our mistakes. Like, the season, like after like nationals and after, was just going perfect. I was the fittest I'd ever been. I was getting fitter. I thought I'd kind of reached my peak, and then like I'd do more training sessions. Like, gosh, I didn't even try, and I'm hitting these splits. And then we'd go to another race, and I'd run faster. Like, I'd break the state record that I'd never been able to do before. Like, I was smashing people who should be like closer around me, and everything was going super right. And then I got smacked the flu just before I was meant to leave. So just under 4 weeks out from the Olympics. And I was just so sick from it. And so then it was just a matter of trying to put the pieces back together as much as I could. And I think I did my best from a psychological point of view. But like, when race day rolled around, like, by the time I probably got halfway into the race, like, my lungs were just cactus. And like, chatting to the doctor afterwards, he goes, with the amount of like blood and like just guck you're coughing up from your lungs, he goes, that's effectively where your gas exchange happens. So you probably didn't really have too much of a chance going into that race, which was a bit disappointing because I feel like we'd finally cracked the code, done it all right, you know, learnt from our mistakes, and chatting to my sports psych leading into it, I said, if everything goes perfect, I think I can probably run an 8:12 steeplechase, you know, crack that Oz record, be at least competitive for the final if things fell in my favour. And like, how I felt just from like a body point of view, like that first K going through in 2:44, like it felt relaxed. Like, that was the pace we were training at. That's on for about that. So it was just disappointing that the lungs and the system just weren't in a place to kind of support that. But overall, I mean, you just get unlucky with those things. Like, and I think the way my mind ticks is, if you leave every stone unturned, you can't be disappointed. And so I feel like even though I wish objectively I'd come out with a better result from it, we learned perfectly from like my experience leading into it, and I think we did everything right. And you can't control everything sometimes. That's part of sport. It's unpredictable.
Absolutely. What was your overall mindset like leading up to that second Olympics? Because you stated that, the first one, it was a bit overwhelming and, you were going through a lot basically. So did you have to shift anything mindset wise to get you prepared and look at the second one a bit differently?
Yeah, I was a lot more relaxed going into it. So like even when I was sick, I had it, and like credit to the medical team that I was working with, like both here and overseas.
Yeah.
They didn't tell me till after the race that I had no chance.
Okay.
Which is exactly what I really wanted, kind of thing. Like if they told me before it, I would have just been deflated.
Yeah.
Because you'd be like, oh, I'm getting ready for something I'm probably just going to bomb at.
Yeah.
Whereas I was so relaxed going in. Like I'd learned from last time, you need to be measured with this stuff. Like I knew I was going to like be told you're in the Olympic team because I was qualified safely going. I was in a good ranking spot going into it. And so I said, you can't be excited going into this. You can't be making stupid mistakes at training. You can't be trying to get to a level that you can't physically be at in this time frame. And so like everything going in was really well measured. And I think my emotional, psychological level was just at that sweet spot kind of thing. It wasn't too over the top, happy, excited like I was last time. And it wasn't, flat like I was maybe before Budapest, being like, oh no, I'm dreading this race. Like I'd really dialed into that sweet spot of just confidence and seeing the world with a lot of good dialed in objectivity.
Right. How did you deal, like, because I'm assuming you had niggles here and there and whatnot, and that can be quite stressful for athletes, and to get over that, but also to incorporate that into your training. And what kind of things were you dealing with, and how did you kind of manage that stuff mentally, but also physically?
So I tore my left hamstring, as I said, 3 weeks out from nationals. And I'd never done a soft tissue. I'd never done a muscle tear anyway, leading into that one. So, and that probably played a little bit to my advantage in the sense that I had no idea what to do. And so I was pretty happy to just sit back and let other people make the decisions for me. So my physio, Tom, like he just said, this is what we got to do, and I'll communicate that with your coach, and that's just how we do it. And that was super easy. And so as I said, I didn't have to think about it. So I was happy doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second time I did it, that was 5 weeks out from the Olympics. And I was a little bit stressed around that because I was thinking, okay, we wanted to do a race leading in, and we want to kind of finish off this training block, so that might compromise that. And so I was a little bit stressed about that. But then I also knew the time frames from last time weren't too bad if I got it right. So I was kind of happy just not doing that lead-in race, getting it right. And just taking that objective approach, because I have like heaps of trust in the team I work with. Like I think they're the best, at least the best for me. I'm pretty relaxed around making those decisions around injuries, niggles, load management, etc. Because I don't think there's anyone out there that could make a better decision than them. And so that's really relaxing for me. Like I just put my trust in them, and I can just focus on being the athlete. They can focus on being the coach or the physio or the doctor. Or
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's good to stay relaxed and to kind of just let others kind of do their job as well. I think that's a good way to look at it. But how did you stay, I guess, locked in mentally for, both Olympics and then for your training? Because again, like there's so much that can go on, and I know you mentioned a lot thus far, but how do you stay locked in, and what do you often, I guess, through your coaching, what do you often give advice of?
Well, how do I stay locked in? I guess it's a journey of you realize when you're not locked in. Probably one thing I am really intuitively I've been good at in my life is just reflection. And so when things have gone well or not well, I'm really good at, I guess, taking a moment and looking back at the decisions I've made why I made those decisions, why I went, even the process of making those decisions, and even just, I guess, the state of who I am psychologically. And I guess I've probably got to a point now, and I hope that at this point in my career, like later on in my career, I'm happy I've finally got to this point where I'm pretty happy in my decision making process, and getting myself in the right mindset. But like it's from a place where I have like not made a lot of the right decisions. Like when, as I said, like I alluded to before, when you're in your early 20s, it's not you don't make a lot of perfect decisions all the time. There are some athletes just naturally are intuitive to it, whereas like I think I made a lot of mistakes, but one thing I did do is learn from them. And from a coaching point of view, that's probably like one thing that I just talk from experience for when I'm dealing with, like, particularly with the young athletes, young male athletes. Um, I guess they're throwing their egos around. They're living their heart on their sleeve a little bit, and sometimes it's about dialing that back at a time. And then when their ego cops a hit, knowing that the sun will rise tomorrow, knowing that we should go through a reflection period more for them more so than me, so that they can go through this kind of week, 2 weeks, month, season leading into the result, whether it goes well or not, and said, okay, what got me to this point? What did I do to compromise it? What did I do to support it? And what skills do I need to learn from that to take forward to get myself in the right mindset? And there's no right way of doing it. Like I have athletes that I work with, and I need to pump them up and get almost like fuel their ego a little bit, sort of thing. And then I have other athletes that if I try and make them all big and macho leading into a race, they go into their shell. Like they don't want that kind of aggressive touch to it. And so and that's where it just comes down to like working with the athlete and working what is best for them. So like they might need that to kind of fuel them, and others, they're just intuitively internal in them. And that's fine too. And that's why I want them to realize that, because that's what's going to help them in their running, but it's probably going to help them in life as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you learn a lot through sport and through preparing for competition or just training in general. So that's super good in that aspect. But what was the pressure like, if anything, like whether it be external or self? Was there any pressures or different pressures from the first Olympics compared to the second Olympics, or?
Yeah, I think the first Olympics there wasn't a lot of external pressure. Or at least I didn't feel there was a lot of external pressure. I obviously have high expectations of myself, but I also didn't really know what I was going into. I'd never done a competition at that level before. My highest level competition before that was a World University Games, which is still an international competition, but it's not nearly at the scale of an Olympic Games. And I don't think anyone was putting a lot of pressure on me from anywhere. Like we obviously, again, like my team had high expectations of myself to go and achieve what I could, but we were still shooting in the dark a little bit, just kind of learning the ropes a little bit. It was at that level. I think going into the second one, there was a bit more pressure because I'd been there before. I'd made a couple of like major Australian teams, and so I think you always want to build on what you've previously done and go slightly better. And I think that was tough when I think I felt in the race that then it was getting tough and I wasn't going to do that. And definitely the first couple of days afterwards, I was like pretty gutted by that. Like I wish I could have gone to another level, been a bit more, at least competitive, like with the guys around me in the heat. Obviously, like again, like when I look back and on reflection and like chatting to the medical team and my coach and other people that were involved, I probably didn't need to be too hard on myself regarding it. But like at the same time too, like when I look forward to the rest of my career and like any more major teams I want to do, presuming that we don't have anything go physically wrong with me, I think the expectation now is that I don't just rock up and get smashed by any means. Like you rock up and you compete and you perform to the level that you've shown, at least in qualifying.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of things have you learned about yourself as a person, like competing at that high level? What are kind of things or some outcomes that you've experienced?
I think planning's a big one. Planning and, like as I alluded to before, like reflection. I think sometimes like in a workplace, it's easy just to get dialed into your comfort zone a little bit. And work's like really well set up. Like we're in a first world country, so I think holding a job isn't I think if you're a highly competitive driven person isn't the hardest thing sometimes, at least not for me and my personality traits. Whereas you're always on a knife edge when you're competing in running kind of thing. And especially with the athlete level I am, like I'm not rocking up to these championships aiming for medals. I'm rocking up to these championships and I'm kind of just scraping in of qualifying. So then it's a pretty high level for me to almost, I have to execute near perfectly kind of thing to be competitive with these guys. And that teaches you definitely a lot of planning, a lot of how we're going to execute the race sort of thing, how we're going to execute our training leading in, reflecting on that in terms of like what cost us last time. And I think as well, not letting your ego get too hit kind of thing too. So like as I alluded to before, sport's pretty random at times. It can be unpredictable. It's why for better or worse, there's a massive betting market on it kind of thing, like because there are curveballs sometimes. And you're not going to just rock up every single time and just win every single race you rock up. You're not even going to rock up and even just do well at every single race. You're going to have bad days here or there for reasons that are your fault, reasons that aren't your fault. And if you come out of those races and your ego cops such a massive hit that you can't pull yourself out of that hole, then you're not going to get progression. And so it's about knowing and accepting that a little bit. And I think almost like taking a statistics-based approach of like, okay, well, I hit 4 out of 5 last season, then I've hit 6 out of 7 this season, then I've hit 9 out of 10 going forward. So I think from a professional level, I remember like this, like reading about this comparison is that if you're looking at your sport from like an amateur point of view, you're looking at the best you can achieve as a one-off. Whereas a professional rocks up and like when you go to work, it's more about just not messing up kind of thing. Just don't make a mistake sort of thing. So I think for me, I'm just looking at just minimize and don't have bad days more than anything. Yeah, and be consistent with it. And that's what I did last year. And I had my best season ever last year. And I had, like as I said, once I hit nationals, I didn't have a bad race.
Yeah, okay. What motivates you now, like, you know, to continue to want to be better? What motivates and drives you now versus like back when you were competing the first or the second one?
Yeah, so I think, look, motivation when you're young is easy.
Okay.
Because you're at the start of your, at least for myself, it's easy because you're at the start of your career. There's so much you can see that you can improve on.
Yeah.
And I think like by definition, you're at the start of your journey, so you can see that there's plenty more to come.
Absolutely.
You should be going to new heights.
Yeah.
Why I want to keep going is because I still think that there's like mountains to be climbed.
Yeah. Okay.
There's still like new goals and progression that I think I can make.
Yeah.
As soon as I get to a point where I think I can't make that progression anymore, there's nothing more that I can physically achieve out of myself, both physically and mentally.
Yeah.
That's probably where I'll close the book on it.
Okay. All right. And I mean, you probably already do this to like your younger athletes, but if you could talk to your younger self, is there anything you'd say now versus, 5-10 years ago?
5-10 years ago. 10 years ago is a lot, I'd say to myself.
Okay.
Yeah. 5 years ago, I think, so that was kind of leading into the last Olympics. So I'd probably look at it and be like, life's going pretty well at this point. You're in a pretty good trajectory, so just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, okay.
But probably like 10 years ago, I wasn't on a trajectory for this. And so I think I was in a really unknown place. So I was like like late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
I wasn't in a bad place, but I definitely wasn't dialed in like I am now. Like I said, I was starting running, not taking it seriously. And that's probably something I tell myself is I'd say like you're going to achieve a lot in this that you're not expecting right now. And so maybe take it a little bit more seriously earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that would have, like, if I look back on it, if I'd probably taken it a bit more seriously, and I think knowing that I had the potential I did in my, like, early 20s, I maybe would have gone a bit better leading into that Tokyo Olympics, had a bit more experience leading into it. And so then that would have just sped up my whole process a bit more. So whereas, like, now I look at myself and one kind of, there's blessings and curses in like starting sport a little bit later. Like I think a blessing is that when you start getting better, you're a bit more mature, so you make rational decisions, and you're also not holding on to expectations of like junior performance either. Yeah. But like the curse is that like I look at myself now and I was like, I just wish I had more time. Yeah. Like I wish I was 25, 26 and achieved what I have, and then still had like another 5, 6, 7, 8 years of like really high end physiology that I don't know near what the limit is. Whereas like I think I'm probably not far off seeing what my limit is.
Right.
kind of thing,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. What kind of things are you doing for you, really? You know, non-training, non-competitively. How do you spend time for you? Because I think that's important as an athlete as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think one thing I'm probably good at, and maybe it's a bit of a you hang on a knife's edge with it, is I do keep busy. And so like I love my job, so I work probably a few more hours than most athletes, and that's not solely out of like I need to fund my life. Like I do like going there, and I like doing a good job at work, and I work with a really I work in a really high level clinic at Spark. So like the clinicians there, like we're just talking off air about like how good like the medical team there is. Like I know how good the allied health team there is, and like that's why I see them as well, because I think they're the best. And so I like being in that high performance environment, even from a work point of view. And I think that keeps me busy, and I think it's the right level of keeping me in with running outside of running too. Like I see a lot of runners because like just naturally that's the patients that I guess passively market to. But at the same time too, like I'm not coaching all of them one on one. I'm not going to their races, and so I get to indulge a little bit in those skills and passions. Without it really forming a strong emotional connection to either. And then I guess things that I do to just completely zone out. Like I was like telling you when we walked in before, is like I've been getting into cycling recently, and so I like following that.
Yeah.
And that's like not from oh cool, I want to be a cyclist.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, how people follow their football
Absolutely,
team.
yeah.
I just follow cycling.
Yeah.
kind
Okay.
of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Because I think it's important. Like, you have a goal, and young athletes probably in particular, like they're so driven and they so want something, but forget about these extra things, which can be a make or break sometimes as well. Like, yeah, you have to put in the work, but you have to focus on you as well sometimes. What advice do you often give to young athletes who have a dream of going to the Olympics?
Yeah, it's just about, I think, being patient.
Yeah,
More than
okay.
it is such a patient sport, and that's patience from an acute level. I think sometimes in junior racing, that's patience from a process level in terms of like life. So
Yeah.
I think the hardest thing that I look back on, like when you're young, is time goes slower.
Okay.
I just feel like I remember when I was a kid, a week just felt so long.
Yeah.
Like you go through school and be like, is it? How are we only on Wednesday?
Yeah,
Like the
yeah.
weekend feels so far away. Whereas like sometimes I blink and a month's gone now.
Yeah, I know.
And I feel like that's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I chat to people who are well older than me, double my age.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, yep, strap yourself in.
Yeah.
Time's just like going to get faster for
Yeah.
you kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so I think when you're dealing with young athletes, patience is definitely a skill that's worth developing. Patience, perspective, and I think always just chipping away. So that kind of mindset of like you're effectively you've got to just put another brick on the wall, kind of thing, one at a time. It doesn't you don't just blink and the wall's built. You have to go through all these different stages and processes. And I think as well, knowing that like having high goals and chasing high goals gives you so much more in life than just the outcome of if you make the Olympics or not. Like I look at all the skills that I passively developed through aiming for an Olympics, and they've helped me so much in my workplace. They've helped me in my interpersonal skills. They've helped me even just in like my mental health kind of thing. So like athletics is an incredibly hard sport. It's like so high pressure, and when I was young, like that is hard, especially like as I said, like if you're a early 20-year-old male, you're gonna get your ego knocked so much, and that's even for guys that are gonna end up being like major medalists, because you don't win every race. There's no athlete out there that's won every single race they've been in, And that teaches you resilience, I think, and it teaches you to not get knocked down and stay down. It teaches you that if you get knocked down, you get up, you have a look at why you got knocked down, you analyze it so that you don't get knocked down next time, or you don't get knocked down as hard next time. And so that way you're closer to getting up next time. And so when you get up a bit higher.
Yeah, no, that's a very good way to look at it. But before we get into the vulnerability corner, let's maybe shift gears a little bit. When you have people come in to see you, you know, as a podiatrist, they have little niggles that say shin splints is probably the most common thing. Yeah. What are some common tips that you often give? You know, I think it's individualized for everybody really, but what's a common reason you see people come in with shin splints, and what's one thing that you often have to obey, like, okay, well, we need to start with this and go from there?
Yeah. Oh, all comes down to patience.
Yeah.
Everything is patience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the reason I say that, and I guess the spiel that I give to a lot of my patients, I see a lot of people under the age of, we'll say, under the age of 35 coming in with shin splints. So whether it's like adolescents, early 20s kind of thing coming in, and they're just starting to get a bit more serious about their sport, or they've just got into running sort of later in life. There's not heaps of people that take up running at a serious level in their 40s. I'm sure they're out there, but they're just a bit more of a rarity. And I make the comparison to, like, when I see my runners who do come into the clinic with other injuries, or when I chat to like uninjured runners who are in their 40s, like their 40s, late 30s sort of thing, none of them have shin splints. And so what I say to them is that what's going on is that you're early on, relatively, in this whole like running journey, and your body's getting really fit, and your tissue capacity just can't handle it. So you're usually running a bit too fast, sort of thing, for where we are at right now. And so you just got to be patient with it. So that kind of trajectory of increase that we're going for, we might be able to get back to that level, but right now we just need to put that on hold. We need to plateau things a little bit. Sometimes we need to dial it back a little bit, just slow things down, particularly the intensity loads. And we've just got to keep you rolling. And eventually, like, shin splints, as you probably know, is like, it's a really recurring based injury. But what we want to do is that you may get some recurrence, but we want the recurrence to be a little bit less every time when we get it. And then eventually you'll get a year, you won't come and see me. And it's a weird industry like that. If you don't see me, it's a good thing.
Good to go. I always tell my patients, cool, you know, you're good to go. I hope not to see you ever again. You know?
It's a funny one, isn't it? There's not many other industries that you say that to them.
What about footwear? Because footwear's exploded massively. There's so much different technologies out there and things like that. When people come to you with, you know, wanting to get cushion shoes or carbon shoes, or where do you get people to start, really, if it is a new runner, let's say?
So if they literally haven't started, it's a bit tough. It's a little bit of a shot in the dark at that point, and I say probably just load management's your most important one from there, and just learning your body, and if you get sore, just watch that. Usually though, if they've had even just like a little bit of experience, even a couple of months, they're starting to learn which area of their bodies get more sore. And that helps dial in my shoe choices. And when I start talking about whether it's shoes, whether it's the surface you run on, whether it's orthotics, at the end of the day, it's all just physics. Like, you're just taking load off one place and you're sending it somewhere else. And so as a general spiel, more shoe that absorbs more cushion, you're going to hit the ground a little bit harder. And what that's going to do is helps you be a little bit more economic. So, for example, if you run over grass, your body's really good at conserving energy, and it stiffens up all your joint positions. And what that does is you run flatter that way. So it saves energy. Alternatively, if you run on concrete and not much shoe, all of your joint positions, they soften up a little bit, and that's so that the vibration literally doesn't shake your brain and you die. And your body does it. You don't have to consciously think about this. Your body does it for you. And the shoes play a big role in that, and that's how we kind of work with injuries. So if they're getting injuries higher up the chain, so anterior knee, above, like femur as well, I'm generally thinking, like, let's get the calves to absorb a little bit more of that load. So I want to put them in a lower shoe for that, a bit more traditional based, maybe not quite a soft foam, so that they don't hit the ground as hard. If they're getting more of like your shin splints, Achilles, calf, more of those propulsion-based lower leg injuries, then I'm thinking like, okay, we need to wrap that up in a bit more cotton wool, and we want to put you in more shoe. Sometimes like a rocker helps with that, and that's where a carbon plate comes in handy. It helps like really hold that rocker shape, and that's going to send the load a little bit higher up into your knee and quads, but it's going to offload those calves really well for you, and shins sometimes for some people.
Yeah. So what to those athletes out there that, because you hear stories of people that wear a different pair of shoes for speed, a different pair of shoes for long run, or 5 different pairs of shoes a week. What does that, what is that achieving, or what are the aims that people that do that are trying to achieve?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I love answering that question. So I've got this really good analogy that I stole from Ian Griffiths, who's he's a podiatrist over in the UK.
Okay.
He does a lot of like research on orthotics. And he says that you got to view your shoes like golf clubs.
Okay.
So not many people go and play around a golf with one club. They pick the club that is the best club for the purpose of the shot you're about to undertake. So you pick a driver to tee off, you pick a wedge when you're in the sand, and then you pick a putter when you're on the green. It's the same thing with running shoes. So you can pick a shoe, if you pick a shoe that is more specific to the activity you're about to undertake, you can get a lot of benefits out of it. That can be injury prevention, so like we've kind of gone over that with like knee, calf, etc. But then as an example, if you're going to do faster work, you might pick a slightly lighter shoe, and that's going to help with the faster velocity of your foot turnover. It's going to be a bit more comfortable for you that way. Alternatively, if you're running trail, you might pick something that's a bit more grippy. That just like obviously when you hit the ground, you don't want to slide off if you're on like uneven surfaces. If you're going to be running longer, you might pick a shoe that has a bit more resilience in the foam to it. So now we've got like a lot of different foams out there. We have like EVA, which is the traditional based foam. We've got PIBA, which is that kind of racing shoe foam. And the advantage of going into something like a PIBA based foam is it returns energy for longer. So where an EVA based foam, they compress, and you might have heard that some people, they don't like to run in a shoe in back-to-back days because they like to let their foam decompress. EVA is really susceptible to that, whereas a P-back-based foam will return energy for a bit longer. So that's why you see a lot of people now, I think the trending shoe is the Super Blast 2 for the long run. It's a PIBA-based foam, and it's because when you've been out there for 15, 20, 30 Ks, you're still getting more back from the shoe, whereas other shoes at that point, you might have like heard people talk about, feels really good for 20 minutes. After an hour and a half, it feels like I'm bottoming it out. I'm hitting the ground and I can feel the ground. It's not giving any more back anymore. So picking a shoe that's specific to the purpose you're going to undertake it definitely enhances your experience, but it can help with things, like injury management and performance as well.
Yeah. Around Adelaide, what are some places, or where do you kind of often send people when they're looking for shoes? Is there anywhere in particular?
Yeah, I always recommend they go to specialty retail.
Okay.
And that's just because I think the guys at specialty retail stores. And so the two that come to mind for me are the running, there's multiple running companies, but like the running company stores, they all work together and run DNA. Like they do a lot more work than just like your standard general sports store in terms of like teaching their staff, employing runners so that they have experience in these shoes. Like you can pick up a lot of these purpose-based just from like trying lots of different shoes out and going in different runs and realizing that shoe feels better for that and that shoe doesn't feel better for that. They put in the time and effort to learn this stuff, and also the time and effort in networking with healthcare professionals, making sure they're really dialed into how a shoe should be fitting, and sometimes the differences too between how different shoes should be fitting. So it's not a one size fit all for fit. And so like for example, like if you're fitting a shoe that's got like a hard cap on it, then you might want to give yourself a little bit more room than say the shoe that you're just doing road running on.
Right.
And the reason for that is just because the shape of the upper and the stuff in the upper in a hard cap, if you're a little bit too close to it, you're going to notice that cap, whereas you might be able to get away with it in your road running shoe.
Okay.
And people that run in these shoes and try them on, like if you go into, say, the running company and you see Maxie, who's the owner there, like that's one of the first things he'll tell you, kind of thing. He says, this has a hard toe box in it. So we've noticed that people generally go up half an extra size in that. And you're not going to get that at a general sporting store. And so I think it's definitely worth seeking out those specialty running stores, particularly if you're trying a new shoe or a new type of run, or if you've been referred by a practitioner, so that you can just have those subjective like questionnaires with the people working in store.
Yeah, that's quite important. Yeah, because I think like Run DNA, for example, like I think they do exactly that, employ runners, and they know the technologies that are out there because it's forever evolving, sorry, and there's so many more things that are coming out and changes to shoes, and I think it can be overwhelming to people that don't follow all of those
100%,
changes.
yeah.
So it's good to see professionals that know what they're
Yeah.
talking about, really.
Mm.
Now we of course have the vulnerability corner. So there's 5 questions, and what I'm going to get you to do is pick a number 1 through 5, and it's just going to be a random question about a vulnerability question. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So 1 through 5 for
Okay,
me, please.
let's go 4.
4. So, number 4 is, what do you most like about yourself, and what are some things that you've disliked about yourself in the past?
Oh, I got to put on my narcissist hat for the
Yeah.
first part of that one, don't I? What do I like about myself? I think I alluded to before. I like my ability to reflect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really good skill that I've intuitively, or not necessarily intuitively, but I guess maybe the groups and my family that I surround with developed that at like a pretty relatively early age in quite a deep level in me, and I think that's helped me develop a lot of my other skills really well, and has maybe protected me a lot at times too, kind of thing. So I really like that about myself. What I don't like about myself, I think sometimes I can be very blunt and not take the moment to really analyze stuff before I say it. So I'm good at analyzing things once they've happened, but I think that look into the future at times right before I'm about to speak how I perceive the world. That's definitely got me in trouble a few times, and I think it's something that, again, that reflection hat has helped me work on a little bit, but it's still a work in progress. As I said, it's something that I've made a lot of mistakes on in my life, kind of thing. And so I think it's something that I need to keep continuing to practice with.
But are there successes that have come out of that? Because I think sometimes too, like, we overanalyze things, and then the fear of failure comes in, or fear of not doing something. So were there any times where it was the reverse at all?
Yeah. Like, if you look at it that way, it's definitely, I think, helped me in a sense that it definitely helps me be more transparent. And so when I work with people, and I work with the right people that I think don't, and I don't go too far with it, kind of thing, I think it can definitely trigger conversations that can be really productive at times and speed up that process really well. But yeah, I guess it's like anything, isn't it? In that kind of subjective world, it is always a grey area. It's always a scale, and I think dialing in that scale, it's a fantastic life skill that you've got to keep chipping away at.
Absolutely. Now, Matthew, where can people follow you, work with you, or plug in socials or anything that you want to plug in?
Yeah, so I guess if you want to follow along, probably my Instagram is the only one I'm really active on. So that's at Matty Clarke, MATTIICLARKE.
Yeah.
If you need any help in, healthcare world, so I'm a podiatrist at the Sports and Arthritis Clinic in Mile End in South Australia. So you can call them up or book an online there.
Sweet. And that'll be in the show notes, everybody. So you can definitely click the links there. But thank you so much for coming on. I think a lot of people will get a lot from this. That'll be great. But yeah, thanks a lot.
My pleasure, Jordan. Thanks for having me.
To all of my people out there that are driven and goal-oriented, you probably already know the importance of reflecting, about reflecting on your failures, about reflecting on your successes, and how that can shape your future. I am somebody that loves journaling. I have tested out and I've used numerous journals. I've probably spent hundreds of dollars on journals, finishing a journal and moving on to the next one. The issue is that some journals have aspects to it that I love, but then other things that I don't use and I don't think are effective. Another issue is a lot of journals are just the same activity every day for 50 days or whatever, and I don't feel like I'm getting much between day 1 and day 50. That is why I created my own journal called The Courage to Be Seen. This journal is a 20-day experience. My goal of this journal is to allow you to really reflect and look over your lifespan of stories and things that have shaped you to who you've become now. Reflecting on experiences, reflecting on your journey to help rewrite your future. This journal is coming out very soon. Be sure to follow The Courage to Be Seen on Instagram to stay updated when the journal release date is.